Hello and welcome back to Talkin Giants. Today is August 29, 2025. It's Talkin Giants brought to you by SeatGeek, and we have a mailbag for you today. Also going to wrap up some notes on the Giants' 53-man roster. We're getting close to the final 53. We got the initial 53. The Giants made 2 waiver claims as well. One of them is going straight to IR anyway, so he won't even be on the 53 to start the year. Then he'll be eligible to come back in week 5. We'll go through it. We'll talk about it all. I also did a little bit of a nosedive that I'm proud of it. You know, you're proud that you're doing good work, but not happy about the little bit of nosedive I did into the Liz Frank injury and the Liz Frank ligament, what Andrew Thomas is currently struggling with right now. Not currently thrilled about that. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit and what I found, some research and what some studies show as we're trying to figure out if Andrew Thomas is going to come back. He was still non-committal about playing week 1, and I think during Wednesday's practice, he practiced fully. Then Thursday, he's off. So snip, snap for Andrew Thomas. So we'll go through a Liz Frank injury, and then also we will dive into a mailbag. Haven't done a mailbag in a minute. Appreciate everybody hanging out. And this time next week, it will be a Football Friday, and we'll be getting ready for the Giants to play. I'm jazzed, man. I'm jazzed. I'm excited. I want this. I want to see this football team out there. And I think most importantly right now, I think all Giants fans can agree with this. I'm excited to root for this team, right? I'm not just excited for the Giants because they're my favorite team and, we go to the games, you're a regular season ticket holder, or you watch from home, and then you do your regular traditions, right? I'm kind of excited to see what this team is going to do. There are guys on it that we like from top to bottom. I don't even need to go through it all, but there's guys that you want to root for. There's intrigue about when are they going to move to Jackson Dart. That's going to be one of the mailbag questions that we'll talk about at the end, but I'm excited to watch this football team go out there because I think for the first time in probably since 2021, because 2020 was a vibes year, and okay, but can they get better from 2021? Can they get better from what they did in 2020? 6 wins. But I'm excited to see these guys go out there, these players, and see what they can do. I think it's a collection of guys that are going to be pissed off if they get punched in the mouth. I think they're going to try and punch back. I think there's a collection of guys, even led by this rookie class, led by Malik Neighbors, that if they get punched in the face right away, I think they're going to want to punch back. And I don't think it's just going to be the same old Giants of if things don't go right away, or if they face a little adversity, that you just give up and it's over. I hope that's not the case. It's easier to say that in August. It's easier to say that when you're walking away from a 3-0 preseason where you kick the shit out of every team. Oh, and there was a stat, by the way. I'm going to pull up this stat right now. There's a stat, by the way, that has if you read it and if you like stats like I do about the Giants preseason, then it's like, oh my God, well, we're going to the Super Bowl. We're going to the playoffs. And here it is. So, yeah, I never read this. So this is from John Breach, at John Breach. The Giants became the 8th team since 2009 to outscore their preseason opponents by at least 60 points. Of the previous 7 teams, 6 made the playoffs, 2 won the Super Bowl. They averaged 11.1 wins, and Russell Wilson was the quarterback of 2 of those 7 teams. So the Giants are number 8. They're going to join that trend. We'll see what their numbers wind up being. And I'm excited for it, man. Like I said, excited to root for these guys specifically. But let's talk about some roster notes and some... Basically, I think they are kind of footnotes for the most part. So the Giants made 2 claims. They claimed cornerback Rico Payton from the Saints, and they also claimed former Ravens safety, former Maryland safety as well, Bo Braid. Like I said, from the Ravens, he's a safety. So the Giants went into post their initial 53-man roster. They had 3 safeties. Bo Braid is going to be the 4th, and then they add Rico Payton as well. And like I said, Rico Payton's going to be put on IR. He is eligible to come off of IR after the 4 weeks of the season. They must have really wanted him. Art Stapleton indicated and hinted that Joe Schoen and his staff really liked Payton from the pre-draft process. They wanted to get him as a UDFA last offseason. They did not. Both of these guys, both Payton and Bo Braid, logged over 200 special team snaps last year, and both of them logged under 25 defensive snaps. I think Payton had 21 defensive snaps in 2024, and Bo Braid even had less. So that's basically the claims. They're special teams guys. Cool that the Giants get somebody that they identified during last year's process. I don't really put any major notes into that. The Giants release Gunnar Olszewski. I think once Peyton goes to IR, the expectation is that Gunnar Olszewski is going to be back to join the 53-man roster as the main return man of this team. The only two players that the Giants lost and that were claimed by another team, Tommy DeVito goes to the Patriots. Josh Dobbs is going to be that QB2 there, so hopefully Drake May doesn't get hurt. I'm a Drake May fan. I think a lot of us are Drake May fans. But it will be interesting if, for whatever reason, Drake May isn't ready to play during that Week 13 matchup, Monday Night Football. Could it be Tommy DeVito versus Jackson Dart? Probably at that point, right? Tommy DeVito versus Jackson Dart, two buddies playing Monday Night Football on national television. That would be a pretty niche story, but that would also be kind of fun and kind of interesting. I hope Drake May has a good year. But do you consider Tommy DeVito to be QB2 over Josh Dobbs? I would probably say no. I would say no, but you never know what's going to happen. You never know if Josh Dobbs will even make it to that point. You never know. He's bounced around a little bit. So Tommy DeVito goes to the Patriots. Greg Dulcich went to the Dolphins. It was reported initially that the Giants signed him back to the practice squad, and then Greg Dulcich winds up going to the Dolphins, as he should, because that Dolphins tight end room is not very good right now. It's in a very fragile spot, and Darren Waller's a very fragile player who was just activated from PUP himself just a little while back. Greg Dulcich is probably going to be activated for the Miami Dolphins sometime very, very soon. So good for Greg Dulcich. Go and get a spot, man. Here's the practice squad. Amir Smith-Marset made it back. Lil Jordan Humphrey, Jake Kubas, Elijah Chapman, Trace Ford, Timon Fox, Brian Hudson, Jordan Riley, Elijah Garcia, Jude McAtamey will be the international pathway exemption. Dante Turbo Miller, Raheem Lane, and D. Williams. I think the guys that I like most being winding up back in the practice squad, Amir Smith-Marset winding back up in the practice squad is good as a backup slot depth and also as a return man. Lil Jordan Humphrey. If we need more wide receiver depth, which that is a conversation that's it's big amongst the fan base right now, at least on Twitter, talking about the lack of wide receiver depth, which is kind of fair, but you have three main guys, or really, honestly, it should be four. I know we consider Jalen Hyatt to be a zero, and there's a Jalen Hyatt question on this mailbag that we'll talk about. But Lil Jordan Humphrey on the practice squad, I think is just fine. They can activate and elevate him at any time if any of those wide receivers goes down. I like having Jake Kubas on the practice squad, center guard versatility. Elijah Chapman being back, I think he's going to be elevated at any point of a defensive lineman going down. They could even elevate him a couple times. I think you can elevate guys 3 times from the practice squad on game days, or for that week before you have to sign him to the 53. So even if they want to experiment with, all right, we want a fullback for this game. Like if we're playing the Cowboys who have a shitty run defense week 2, do you want to activate Elijah Chapman as a fullback? Maybe they may explore that. So I like that Chapman's back. And obviously Dante Miller, people are happy that he's back too. So they also Giants signed Swayze Bozeman to the practice squad as well. He's a linebacker for the 49ers, also another special teamer. One of the things that I saw while I was on Over the Cap, because they have all the practice squad guys. They have guys that are on IR. Josh Azudu, I was put on IR. He made the initial 53, but he's put on IR, so his 53 spot doesn't count. So as I was looking at all the spots and practice squad and the lists and stuff like that, saw that the Giants are $8 million in the red right now. The Giants are $8 million over the cap, according to Over the Cap. So they're going to have to rework some contracts and do some stuff, and this is one of the reasons why I was talking about why it may be beneficial to cut Daniel Bellinger, because they would save $3.3 million by cutting Daniel Bellinger. So $3.4 million, I think they would have $100K in dead cap. So they're going to have to rework some contracts, and the 3 main options really are Dexter Lawrence, Andrew Thomas, or Brian Burns. Now, that Brian Burns contract has been reworked already, I think, and just looking at how that contract is laid out, I don't know if I want to touch that contract. Dexter Lawrence, I think, is going to have to be the guy that they're going to have to rework. They already negotiated some incentives in Dexter Lawrence's contract, I believe, right before camp started. So they're going to need to create $8 million in room, and then maybe even a little bit more, because they're going to have to get through the year, which I don't view this as like a huge issue, because I'd rather the Giants not have a million contracts where they're backloading, which they don't. They really have structured a lot of the contracts on their team responsibly. They really have. So even if they have to struggle getting through the year cap space wise, Like, okay, and I know a lot of people, if they're a 3-win team come December, man, the Giants only have $2 million in cap space. They're struggling to get through, and I've been guilty of this in the past too. They only have $3 million in cap space, and they have 3 wins in December. That's really bad roster management. Well, they're not backloading all these deals that they got with the players that they got to pay. So Dex's contract, probably they're gonna have to do something with it. They have to create $8 million in some way. And I wrote down Andrew Thomas, but I don't know if that's a contract that you want to touch either. Which brings me to this Liz Frank injury that he has, and a little bit of the research that I did into that. Andrew Thomas is still only 26 years old. He's 26, man. And there's got to be a worry. There has to be a worry before we see him on the field, before we see him that he's okay. And even just hearing the snip, snap, snip, snap. One day you think that he's going to be ready, and it's all part of a plan to ramp him back up. I get it. But we're all just so worried about this dude, and for good reason, because he's so damn important. And when he's right and when he's on, he's so damn good. One of the best left tackles in football, and left tackle is the second most valuable position in the game of football. And it just changes this offense. It changes this offense where the Giants' offense would be unwatchable, ungodly awful with him out of the lineup, and then with him in the lineup, it would be watchable and bearable. Not great, not good, but it would be bearable to witness and to see, and they could actually function as an offense in the NFL. And without him, when he's not here in the last couple of years, as we know, it's awful, and it's bad, and it's unwatchable. Want to gouge your eyes out. So Andrew Thomas is not a contract that you want to touch. I think, and I hate to say this, Andrew Thomas's contract is something you can get out of. If you don't touch any of the money, they can get out of it at the end of next year. At the end of 2026, heading into 2027. And that's so crazy to be like this 26-year-old really good left tackle in a time where the Giants need to create at least $8 million in cap space. This 26-year-old left tackle who earned this contract and is so damn good, you can't touch the contract. Ideally, we don't live in an ideal world, but ideally you don't want to touch that contract. And this Liz Frank injury, not fun, not great. And let's talk about it a little bit. So the Liz Frank ligament, what that does is it helps stabilizes the midfoot, and it helps transfer force between the forefoot and hindfoot when pushing off. Oh, what do you kind of need to do as a tackle when you launch? You kind of need to push off, right? Impacts skill positions, but it impacts skill positions more. But for tackles, I think it could really impact you, right? Especially if, acceleration and quickness and things like that. Obviously, yes, it does affect running backs and wide receivers and the stop-start ability a lot more. But stabilizing that midfoot, helping transfer that force, that sounds a lot of what tackles have to specifically do in their sets. A study of NFL Liz Frank injuries from 2000 to 2010 found that over 90% of players returned to play with a median return time of 11.1 months. So we're approaching that. We are approaching around 11 months, not in August, but he suffered that injury in October. That was the 6th game of the year against the Seahawks. So that's in October. So we're approaching around 11 months, and that was between 2000 to 2010, missing roughly 8.5 games was the study. But more recent study, and this is important because Thomas is going to come back, and the studies that I were reading and the results that I was reading, a lot of guys do come back and they play and they're okay, but what is their performance like? More recent study, 2009 to 2020, a study found statistically significant drop in approximate value in AV. That's basically Pro Football Reference's version of WAR, if you know WAR, wins above replacement in baseball. So 2009 to 2020 study found a statistically significant drop in AV, a metric accounting for overall contribution. 1 year post-injury, a median drop from 6.0 to 5.0. So there are going to be questions on how Andrew Thomas is going to perform, especially when this guy is so athletic, and athleticism is his main trump card, and being so quick and being so agile and mirroring guys. That's Andrew Thomas's game. So there's a worry. There's inevitably going to be a worry until we see it. And then the question and the challenge for him will be, okay, we'll see you for a couple weeks. Can we see you for more than a couple weeks? And that will be the challenge. And I mean, if you had to put a gun to my head, which has become my new favorite slogan as doing this solo Talkin Giants these solo Talkin Giants episodes, it's been like my new favorite thing. If you got to put a gun to my head and you got to have me predict something instead of just talking around it, does Andrew Thomas play week 1? No. I do not think Andrew Thomas plays week 1. And I think I'm okay with that because it's way more important for Andrew Thomas to play week 10 than it is week 1. So that's Lisfranc injuries a little bit. And one more thing before we get fully to the mailbag. The Giants announced their captains, which also, which made me think of Andrew Thomas and then go down this rabbit hole of Lisfranc stuff because Andrew Thomas is not part of the 2025 season captains. Russell Wilson is. Darius Slayton for the first time in his NFL career, which I appreciate that, and I think he's earned it. Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, and Bobby Okereke. Bobby Okereke, a little interesting there. As Ryan Dunleavy and a lot of reporters are coming on and saying that I'm going to have Jordan Ron on for Monday's show. Today's Thursday, the 28th. I'm recording an interview with Jordan on the 29th. So then that interview will come out on Tuesday, not Monday, because Monday is a Happy Labor Day. So I'll ask Jordan a little bit about Bobby Okereke too, because I haven't heard his perspective on that. So those are the 5 captains. I don't really take too much of Andrew Thomas not being a captain. I think everybody that was awarded a captain, that's not a surprise. I think they deserve it. The offensive line is a unit that's been together for a whole year, but also because of Andrew Thomas's unreliability when it comes to him being on the football field, is that a reason that he's not a captain? I don't know. Does captainship really matter? I think it does, but I think that could play into this. Rest of these guys are pretty much available. Dex has been playing through injuries, and Bobby Okereke played through an injury last year. So Brian Burns played through an injury last year. So I don't really have a problem with Andrew Thomas not being on there, and I don't really view that as like a significant piece and part of the future. Like I don't really have much of a take from it. So all right, there you go. There's a 53-man roster. We're getting closer to the final 53, but we're past the initial 53. Everybody landed back on the practice squad that we want. Tommy DeVito goes to the Patriots. Greg Dulcich goes to the Dolphins. And the Giants made 2 of those waiver claims, mostly for special teamers, but they have 4 safeties on the roster. They added Rico Payton, who is going to be activated week 5 probably because he's going to be put on IR. Let's get to the mailbag. Before we get back to the show, I have to tell you about this game-changing product that I know a lot of my close friends and family members use before we go out for a night with some drinks. And it's called ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink alcohol... When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's a buildup of this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for rough days after drinking. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember, to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night, drink responsibly and you'll feel your best tomorrow. So go to zbiotics.com/Giants to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Giants at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/Giants and use that code GIANTS at checkout for 15% off. Now we're going to get back to the show. All right, welcome back to the show, and let's actually get to the mailbag now and not read another ad. Let's get a question from FCB Easel 2567 on Instagram. Do you think we made a good call cutting Greg Dulcich? Thanks to everybody that asked the question, by the way. I think they did. And I'm going to get into it a little bit more as to why, instead of just saying, yeah, he went to the Dolphins. It's a prerequisite for me for tight ends to block, and especially backup tight ends. And here's why. Like, for all of you asking, why is Chris Manhertz on the team? What does he do? What purpose does he serve? Greg Dulcich had a good summer. He had a really good connection with Jameis Winston. Had a really good final game with Jackson Dart and the Patriots and everything like that. So he was showing a connection with multiple quarterbacks this summer. I'm going to give you the second tight end receiving numbers by year. The tight end that was second on the team and what their stats have been since 2020. Let's go to 2024 first. So Daniel Bellinger was second on the team as a tight end in receiving. He had 14 catches, 125 yards, no touchdowns. Daniel Bellinger was also the number 2 tight end on the team in 2023, second leading tight end receiver. Now, Darren Waller was hurt for a lot of those games. He had 25 catches, 255 yards, and 0 touchdowns. Lawrence Cager, listed as a wide receiver on Pro Football Reference, but he was a tight end, mostly a tight end. 2022, Lawrence Cager was second, 13 catches, 118 yards, and 1 touchdown. I think a lot of that came in that Eagles game. Remember the final week of the year? 2021 was Kyle Rudolph, the best tight end 2 season that the Giants have had over the last 5 years. Really sad. 26 catches, 257 yards, 1 touchdown. Caden Smith in 2020 had 18 catches, 112 yards, and 0 touchdowns. That's a total of 84 games. 84 games, the stat line is 96 catches, 867 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's 19.2 catches per season, 173.4 yards per season, 1.12 catches per game, and 10 yards per game. I don't think that's enough, that rate. And let's just say that, okay, but the Giants offense this year is going to be better. Okay. I just don't think whatever Greg Dulcich would have provided as tight end 4, not even 3, it's tight end 4, would have been fully worth keeping him on the 53 if he is not a reliable blocker. And he is a complete reliability as a blocker. I think tight ends who can block help make an offense way more versatile. I think it makes it easier running out of 11 personnel. It's going to help the offensive line out, which I think this offensive line specifically needs as much help as they can get with runs under center. If you want to be in the I formation on 1st and 10 and be in 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back, having a tight end that could put his hand in the dirt and help out the offensive line is helpful. Having a tight end that could stay in as a pass blocker is also super helpful too. And I don't think Dulcich was enough of an advantage at tight end 3/tight end 4 as a receiver. Like, oh yeah, we're going to work him in the offense. So I do think people were really, number one, people really overinflate the impact that backup tight ends can have when they've averaged the last 5 years for the Giants. I understand bad offenses, but they've averaged 1 catch per game, 10 yards per game. And that's tight end 2s. Tight end number 2s, not even tight end number 1. So I am perfectly fine with the 4 that they kept. Fidoni's a 7th-round draft pick with traits. Joe Schoen talked about those traits. Like, Thomas Fidone showed those traits throughout the spring and throughout the summer that they liked, that he earned that roster spot. And then you have the 3, and Theo Johnson may be going through some sort of injury too, and he's been missing practice time. That's a little discouraging. His status for week 1, I think, is also up in the air right now too. So Daniel Bellinger may be that main tight end 1, or even Thomas Fidone and Daniel Bellinger, 12 personnel. 13 personnel, you get Chris Manhertz out there too, and he's a kick-ass run blocker. And I think Chris Manhertz being a kick-ass blocker, pass blocker, and run blocker, I think that in the long run of a season serves much more of an advantage for a football team than a guy that will get 1 catch per game, 10 yards per game. So that's Greg Dulcich, and I know a lot of people were upset about that. All right, next question. This is I don't know if I could say this guy's handle. Jeff, producer Jeff, we may have to blur this out. But Chronicles of Blank, he is a Packers Donald Trump profile picture, AI. How do you like that? He asked, at this point in time, what percentage do you predict the running back carry split? And then my guy J5, Johnny, 2 questions. What's up with the tailgates? And 2, what are your year 2 expectations for Tyron Tracy? So tailgates, we're going to do, it's pretty solidified, but it's not announced. So the Giants don't have a home game until September 21st, which is pretty helpful. As of right now, we're doing 3 tailgates. We are doing the Chiefs game, we're doing the Eagles game on Thursday night, and then we're going to do the 49ers game 1 o'clock in November. I'm still going to be in L16 just hanging out for the rest of the tailgates, but we're only going to be doing 3 tailgates this year. Those 3, Chiefs, Sunday Night Football, Eagles, Thursday Night Football, 49ers. And tickets will be going live soon. I hope soon. I know our guy Justin on events is working on that. So that's the update with the tailgates. They will be happening. Not as many this year. We're going to be doing 3. They're going to be a lot of fun, and I hope to see you there. But I'll be in L16 anyway, L16, L17 on the curb, hanging out. Just won't provide alcohol and food for the rest of those games. But the other questions are about what percentage do you predict the running back carry split, and then what are your expectations for Tyrone Tracy? I'll start off with Tyrone Tracy first. So last year, Tyrone Tracy, his 17-game pace was about 60 yards per game. And on a 17-game pace, he was going to end with around 1,100 yards. Now, if you include receiving, a total of 260 touches, which is not nothing, about 1,400 yards and 7 touchdowns. Now, he had a 6-game stretch between weeks 5 to 10, and I've talked about this plenty of times this offseason. But if you're new, if you're just catching up on the Giants, we'll go through it again. It's always good to get a reminder of good Giants stats. So weeks 5 through 10, after Tyrone Tracy kind of takes over that mantle in that Seahawks game, or maybe even the week before, whenever Tyrone Tracy takes over the mantle starting week 5, here are his ranks among running backs with at least 37 carries. Tracy was 5th in the NFL in rushing yards with 516 yards. 61% of his rushing yards came in those 5 weeks. He was 6th in yards per attempt, 11th in missed tackles forced, 4th in runs of 10-plus yards, but 9. Half of his 10-yard runs that season came in that 5-week stretch. And he was 8th in breakaway rate. So that 5-week stretch, or 6-week stretch with weeks 5 to 10 was pretty damn good. And if I had to really envision what the split's going to look like between Tracy, Scadaboo, and Singletary, I think as a team they could combine for around 2,000 rushing yards. In 2022, they combined as a team, they had 2,500 rushing yards. I don't think they're going to get close to that. But 2023 and 2024, I think they could get over what they did. 2023, they had 1,874 rushing yards. 2024, they had 1,783. So I think it's fair to say that this offense could get 2,000 rushing yards this year. About 2,000. So now it comes down to, how do you split up the 2,000 rushing yards? You're not going to have, as Russell Wilson's not running the ball at this point in his career. Jackson Dart will run, but it won't be Daniel Jones rushing. Like Daniel Jones had 700 rushing yards at 5.9 yards per attempt in 2022. And as a team in 2022, they averaged 4.8 yards per attempt.
Are you doing an interview?
No.
Micah Parsons traded to the Packers.
Mike, are you serious?
Absolutely serious.
Are you fucking serious?
Serious.
What's the package? What's the Parsons package? Unknown?
Yeah.
Pretty Ricky. So this is the Micah Parsons reaction right now that's happening in the middle of the Cam Scadaboo and Tyrone Tracy splitting backfield packages. It's got to be at least 2 first and 1 second, and then a day 3 pick, plus at least a contract that's $45 million. I would hope it's 3 first-round picks for Dallas, but this is awesome. This is so awesome. This is so awesome. He's out. Get out. Shout out Pretty Ricky, man. He knows all. He knows everything. Everything. Oh, this is so awesome. Micah Parsons, out. Out of the NFC East. It's got to be at least 2 first-round picks. The package that Ricky put out was 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and then, oh, that was awesome. And I'm sorry, we're keeping that in. You'll know the package by the time you hear this, but for Dallas' sake, I hope it's 3 first-round picks. I hope it's 3 first-round picks. That puts the Packers up there with the Eagles, by the way, in the NFC. Without a doubt. I think Jordan Love is going to have a really good year. Jordan Love's pre-bye splits and post-bye splits, and he was hurt, remember, with a calf injury in the early part of last year. He comes back after the bye. He only throws 1 interception. He has a ton of explosive plays, plays really good football, like top 5, top 6 in EPA per play. And the main thing about the Packers is that they don't really have stars. They're like a jack of all trades, but master of none. They have depth everywhere. They have solid players everywhere, but they don't really have stars. So now you add Micah Parsons to that mix. I think that is a team and a roster that could compete with the Philadelphia Eagles. But man, the Cowboys, entering a rebuild that they're still probably going to win 5 to 6 games this year, maybe even 7. They're entering a rebuild where they just traded away the best player on their team. I do think Micah Parsons is better than CeeDee Lamb. And they're going to have to pay Jordan. Man, I don't. Why did you trade for George Pickens? Why did you trade for George Pickens? They just don't want to pay anybody. That's what they don't want to pay anybody that's not on their terms. Man. And also these why I hope it's 3 first-round picks for the Cowboys. As a Cowboy fan, I'm wanting 3 first-round picks. The Packers are going to be picking in the back end of the first round. That second-round pick you're getting, it's going to be closer to third-round value than true second-round value. So I hope it's 3 first-round picks for them because the Packers are going to be picking in the back end of the first round every year because they're good. And they have a core. That's not going anywhere. Damn, that's awesome for the Packers and awesome for us. Yes, get out. All right. Back to the running back splits. There's about 2,000 yards, I think. I think this Giants offense can run for 2,000 yards this year. So how is that going to be split up? Tyrone Tracy, like we said, was on pace for 1,100 yards last year. 1,100. And I think that's fair to expect that he can get that again this year. I think him getting 1,100 yards is reasonable. Now you got to think, well, the offense was so damn bad last year. You would think that Tyrone Tracy would even get a little bit more. I think 1,100 yards is fair, though, when you really lay it out. I think that's fair. 60 yards per game. So where does that leave everybody else? I think Cam Skattebo and Devin Singletary could be 60-40. Is Cam going to be 60 or is Devin going to be 60? I think one of them can get 600 yards and then another can get 400. And then that's about the 2,000 yards. And then, maybe if the Giants end with 2,200 yards, then that's 200 rushing yards of Jackson Dart. 2,300 yards, and then you're really getting close to 2022. That's Russell Wilson rushing yards added on top of that. You got to add in a sprinkle of Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson rushing yards too, if they're going to get some sweeps and push passes and shit like that. So I don't know, man. If obviously the expectation of what we want is for Cam Skattebo to be the one that gets the 60 out of that 40, right? The 600 yards. Here's what it's going to come down to. Who plays? It's going to be determined by 2 main things. Who isn't going to fumble and put the ball on the ground, and who can pass block. If you're going to fumble and put the ball on the ground, the guy behind you is going to get more chances. If you can't pass block, the guy behind you is going to get more chances. And man, do I hope that Cam Skattebo, number 1, stays healthy, and number 2, can pass block. Because what he flashed this summer, he flashed as a receiver. How will the Giants utilize Cam Skattebo as a receiving back? Now, Barkley at times was a legit receiver, but he had some bad drops, and I think there's a difference between being, again, a good receiving back and simply a weapon. And I think we lost that as Giants fan when it came to Saquon Barkley and his time here. We lost the whole, well, this guy is a receiver. You can target him downfield. I think he's a weapon. I don't think he was necessarily a good receiving back, at least not after 2019. 2018, 2019, he was targeted down the field, and it was different. Remember that Houston Texans touchdown that he had his rookie year? So that was different. But Cam Skattebo, despite not being the same weapon that Saquon Barkley is and was, what he showed this summer was he was a red zone weapon. Jackson Dart layering the football over defenders, and Cam Skattebo toe-tapping, getting his feet in like he's a legit receiver, was awesome. Being targeted down the field, not just screens and stuff that you saw in the preseason. Like I wouldn't, based on the preseason, I wouldn't call Dante Miller a great receiving back. He just caught screens and had space. So you can use Cam Skattebo as a receiving back with screens and stuff like that. But how will the Giants implement possibly getting the football to him down the field, or even, especially like in the red zone? I still think red zone offense for this team can be a little bit of a struggle because I'm not confident in their ability to run the ball under center. They are much better running out of the shotgun. Tyrone Tracy's yards per carry out of the shotgun versus under center was a whole yard's difference. I think it was 4.9 yards per attempt out of the shotgun, 3.9 under center. And they don't necessarily have that kick-ass offensive line that moves people at will under center. But out of the shotgun, when there's less guys in the box, I think they can move well together. So using Cam Skattebo as a receiving back inside the red zone, I think could be a huge X factor for this year. If he can pass block and hold on to the football, then I'm way more confident in Cam Scatterbo getting the 600 yards rushing, and then Devin Singletary is filtered in there for the 400. But I still think Tyrone Tracy is the main guy. I think he gets 1,100 yards this year. I think he gets over 1,000. I think his 17-game pace and what he was doing last year is a fair expectation. I love his ability to one cut. We saw it a little bit in the preseason. I call it like he lulls you to sleep behind the line. He'll lull you to sleep. He'll allow linemen to get in their play. If they're pulling around him, if they're pulling not behind him, if they're pulling in front of him, allows them to get where they need to get a hat on a hat, lull you to sleep behind the line, sticks his foot in the ground, and then goes upfield. So that's how I see it splitting. If the team combines for around 2,000 rushing yards, Tyrone Tracy gets 1,100, Cam Scatterbo gets 60% of the other 1,000, 600, and then Devin Singletary gets around 40. And then you have, if they average 2,300, if they get 2,300 rushing yards this year, then the rest of the other players are going to have to figure out that other 300. All right, before we keep going with the mailbag, I got to talk to you about Chubby's. Are you ready for some football? If you're not, Chubby's is ready to help you with their NFL collection. Whether you're tailgating, grilling, or riding the highs and lows of the game from your couch, Chubby's is the ultimate football apparel brand, so much so they created their own fantasy football league. George Kittle, Ian Rappaport, and others have come together to assemble the Chubby's League on NFL Fantasy. Each week, the top 5 scorers, they're going to win a chance at a Chubby's polo/shorts combo with their team's logo. The grand champion gets the chance at the ultimate fan experience, a 5-city, 5-stadium NFL game tour with the +1. While the fantasy flop faces a hilarious and unforgettable punishment only Chubby's could pull off. Head to chubbyshorts.com/the Chubby's League to learn more and have some fun. Get ready for the most outrageous fantasy football season of your life. And would you look at that, folks, for a limited time, our friends at Chubby's are giving you, our listeners, $10 with the promo code GIANTS at chubbyshorts.com/Giants. That's $10 off your order with the promo code GIANTS, and that includes the NFL collection. Support our show and tell them we sent you. Express yourself. Level up your game day wardrobe with Chubby's. Back to the show. All right, next question is coming from ADMKLY on Instagram, and he's asking about wide receiver 2. How likely is a trade to bring in a wide receiver 2 for the Giants? I saw some interesting ones, including Hyatt, a pick for Jacoby Myers. I don't think the Giants need a wide receiver 2. I don't think they need a wide receiver 2. You reward Darius Slayton. You pay Darius Slayton like a wide receiver 2, and I think they're going to treat him like that with that contract, that as he should. Now, the thing to get more critical of is not moving Hyatt if you don't believe in him, or not cutting Hyatt and just cutting your losses. Releasing Hyatt and releasing that contract, I looked, you think, oh, he's a rookie, it's going to cost you financially. It doesn't. It's basically, it's a zero. They barely lose anything, and then they barely gain anything, dead cap-wise and then cap savings-wise. Neighbors goes down, or any of these guys goes down. Slayton goes down, you feel a little bit more bleak about the wide receiver room, especially if Neighbors goes down. Well, I mean, that's like with any team in any position. Oh, a star goes down, you feel a lot more bleak about the position. Okay. But I don't think the critique is wide receiver 2. I think the critique is just the overall depth of the wide receiver room. I really do think Bo Collins is going to serve a valuable role as an inline blocker. I really do. I don't know how many snaps per game he gets. Do they feel comfortable that Darius Slayton can motion in and be an inline blocker when they're running under center, like I said, because they had a lot of trouble doing that last year? Are you going to put Malik Neighbors on the field on a 1st and 10 and really feel confident in him? Sterling Shepard was a really good run blocker. Like, they would motion him in, and I would feel great. I'd be like, all right, yeah, Sterling Shepard is gonna be able to get in front of somebody and take care of business. He was a really good run blocker as a receiver, and that's what they were doing with Bo Collins in the summer. Is that going to be enough of a role where Bo Collins will actually get starting offensive snaps come Sunday on game days? Is that going to be enough? Plus whatever he can do as a special teamer, right? That's the critique, is what's behind the front 3. Do they believe in Hyatt, or do they not believe in Hyatt? Or even, they clearly don't. How can you can't believe in Hyatt? But can Hyatt function enough as a wide receiver 4? And if you were to get them in a room and they tell you no, then the critique is, well, then why is he on the team? Why wasn't he either moved for a day 3 pick, or you just flat out cut him and you cut your losses and you find somebody else. But also, like, what wide receiver 4 is really going to be an advantage? Like, is Little Jordan Humphrey better than Jalen Hyatt? Maybe. He could be better at, on the sideline, even though they do it differently. Hyatt's speed and Humphrey's contested catches. But at the end, Humphrey may be a better receiver on the sideline than Jalen Hyatt is. And that may not surprise me, which is really fucking sad. Which is really sad. So, they clearly didn't hide Jalen Hyatt that final preseason game. If they were going to move on from him, if they were going to cut him, if they were going to move him, I think they would have tried to do it a lot more quietly. But they made a lot of noise because he dropped passes and then he caught a touchdown. And they were targeting them. They were going after him. Jameis Winston, first play after Jackson Dart gets hurt, is we're not even hesitating. We're not even thinking of any other option. We're going to Jalen Hyatt for a touchdown. We're going to Jalen Hyatt on a goal ball. So I don't think wide receiver 2 is not the trade that they would make, and they're not making a trade for a wide receiver 4. They're just not doing that. The wide receiver room is the wide receiver room. That's what they got. And the only thing that you can really critique and look at and second guess is what are their actual opinions and belief in Hyatt. So that's that. Doug Analytics asked this from the last mailbag, and he asked, and I really wanted to go back to it. Looking at how the Giants performed last year, which stats do you trust most to show real improvement this year, and which ones might be most misleading? So one of the things I wanted to look back at is just how good or decent the Giants' offensive line was with Andrew Thomas in the lineup, and while Daniel Jones was also quarterback last year. So that's weeks 1 through 6. Ironically enough, I did this prep of this question and research. I did it before I really looked into the Liz Frank injury. So take that with a grain of salt. But weeks 1 through 6, it led. Dan Schneier had a tweet, and I was thinking about this tweet this morning. I'm going to read you this Dan Schneier tweet if I bookmarked it. He tweeted something along the lines of, on October 6, 2024, I think that's after the Seahawks game. It is. At this point, we're almost 5 full games into this season, and I can confidently say, this is Dan Schneier, the Giants' offensive line pass protecting better. They are pass protecting better than they have for any consistent stretch since 2009. The jump they made this offseason is massive. I'm so shell-shocked, I'm still not sure it's real. So Doug is asking, which stats do you trust most to show real improvement this year? I'm even thinking of the Giants' offensive line as not even improving, but can they just keep what they did through the first 6 weeks up, which over the course of a full season is improvement, which goes to Doug's question. So weeks 1 through 6, the percentage of dropbacks with some responsibility of pressure, and PFF breaks this up with offensive line and quarterback. The Giants' offensive line ranks 6th in lowest responsible pressure rate. Daniel Jones was 8th in highest responsible pressure rate among quarterbacks. That's important because Russell Wilson, his percentage of pressure that he's going to own, Russell Wilson's going to be high in that category as well. Russ was 2nd highest in that category in 2024. It's going to be high with Russ. But if the offensive line cannot make it worse by them getting their ass kicked and them getting beat, that's even better, right? Quarterback, and it's always it's a dance of sack rate and pressure and who's responsible for what. Quarterbacks holding onto the ball, quarterbacks drifting in the pocket, quarterbacks running backwards, quarterbacks not moving up in the pocket, how they improvise and all that shit. Like it's a dance of who's responsible for what. It's not just an offensive line thing, and it's also not just a quarterback thing. A lot of people, I see a lot of numbers people in football say, well, sack rate is simply just a quarterback stat. It's not. It's also an offensive line stat. So it's important to look at that with Russell Wilson as quarterback. So when Andrew Thomas when he left the lineup, and Jones was still in weeks 7 through 10, so yes, that is a shorter sample size, but the offensive line shared responsibility ranking was 16th, jumped up to 16th out of 21 qualified quarterbacks. 2 main reasons why I feel like the Giants were able to sustain drives so well last year through the first 2 months of the seaon. And they were top 5, top 10 in average time of possession and plays per drive. That's what they were good at doing through the first 2 months last year. They didn't score. They were awful in the red zone. And they were average at yards per drive. But average time of possession and plays per drive, they actually were top 10 through the first 2 months of the season. That's like the only good parts of the Giants offense last year, what they did. But why I feel like they were able to sustain drives so well through the first 2 months of the season, they didn't take a lot of negative plays. They didn't take a lot of sacks. And then also it's Malik Neighbors. I think Malik Neighbors was really did a good job helping them stay on schedule and how they were force-feeding him through the first 2 months of the season. Now, Daniel Jones, despite having over 200 attempts, the third most in the first 6 weeks of the season, he only took 14 sacks. That's a 6% sack rate. And that's awesome, man. And 6 of those sacks, Jones was deemed to be responsible for. So with that in mind, this line, they're the exact same. The main difference is that they've already played a year together, which is huge. A 6% sack rate would be a monumental improvement for the overall health of the Giants offense in 2025. When as an offense, we've constantly, every year, have lived around 10% or higher. Getting that sack rate and that sack percentage down to 5 is huge. But Russell Wilson, like I said, is going to be a victim of taking sacks. The lowest sack rate of Russ's career was 7%. That number needs to be closer to 5 than it is 10. The overall health of the Giants offense will be so much better if that sack rate's 5, 6, maybe flirting with 7. If it's around 10, it's going to hurt. But also, I had some people fairly in my replies give a rebuttal to me when I tweeted out that stat today about 6%. Like, 6% would be huge. I tweeted that out. Some people were like, well, if the sack rate's a little higher, I'm okay with that if the Giants are more explosive, which is also a fair reply, and it's a fair rebuttal. But I still think with how this offensive line played, like let's have an expectation for Russell Wilson to not just be such a shithead taking sacks. And then even whenever the reins are turned over to Jackson Dart showed an amazing ability to navigate the pocket and not take sacks this preseason. It's the preseason, and the speed of the game is going to be a whole lot different when starters are out there. Whole lot different. So, overall health of the offense is going to be better if you can keep that sack rate down. That's a no-shit Sherlock. But why I bring that up, why I bring this up when Doug asks which stats could show real improvement, getting that offensive line for a full season, along with capable quarterback play for a full season, when you combine both of those two things, I'm fascinated to see where it could take that offense and where it could take this offense. So we'll see. And then Andrew Thomas's injury and when he comes back and how long he's going to be back for is a black cloud that is looming on top of this football team right now. Now, for something that's misleading, I feel like a lot of people, including myself, they've looked at the Giants not forcing any turnovers and said, well, because of how bad it was bound to get better, right? I don't necessarily think that's true. Shane Bowen's defenses, they've always had a difficulty forcing them. There's never been a season where he's been a defensive play caller that gives you any sort of hope or indication or optimism that the Giants can force turnovers at a top 10 rate this year. So I think something that is a little misleading is simply looking at their low turnover rate and being like, oh, it has to get better. Just snapping your fingers and saying that. It's not necessarily the case, which kind of leads me to my next question. From Rational Giants Takes at Rational G-Man Fan. What's going on, man? Nice to see you. Besides the quarterback room, which position group do you see taking the biggest leap this year? I have the running back room as number 1, but I already talked all about that. I just think the complement of the 3 of those guys, and Tracy being in year 2, Cam Scattaboo being your second running back with also being like a receiver, and then Devin Singletary, who was your running back 1 heading into last year. I think the running back room as a whole could really take a step up from where they were last year. But also it's the secondary. With the resources that they allocated to Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo, I really hope we're walking away from September feeling the impact of those guys and that they aren't just blending in. Like, oh yeah, Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo, they're okay. They're there. They made a play here. They made a play there. I can't be walking away from September being like, oh, they're just blending in. They're there. They got to touch the football. They have to get their hands on the football and be contributors on the run defense as well. Tyler Nubin has to touch the football. Has to. So the secondary as a whole, with those two additions, it should also make Cordell Flott better. It should make Deonte Banks better, since those guys won't be, Deonte Banks won't be facing wide receiver ones. Those guys should also make, and Javon Holland should help Tyler Nubin out more. Shane Bowen should feel more confident that he can call a more aggressive defense on the back end, disguise some coverages, see if you can get your hands on the football, get some interceptions and force some turnovers, fool quarterbacks in coverage looks on the back end, instead of what Wink Martindale would do on the front end, is he would try and disguise stuff on the front with the front seven. So, besides quarterback room, which position group do you see taking the biggest leap? Running back room and secondary, without a doubt. All right, before we keep going and running on, this episode is brought to you by the Jackpocket Lottery app. Jackpocket lets you order official lottery tickets right on your smartphone. Why wait? Download the Jackpocket app to easily order Powerball, Mega Millions, or official state lottery tickets in just a few quick clicks. Jackpocket is the #1 lottery app in America, and it makes playing quick, simple, and secure. And here's the best part. If you're new to Jackpocket, they've got a special offer just for you. Download the app, opt in, and get a free lottery ticket. Don't forget to use code AWARDS when you sign up. That's code AWARDS on the Jackpocket app to get your free ticket. All right, moving on to the next question. How about Snickety at Snickety? He asked, if JMS were to go down, do they just move in Austin Schlottman to replace him, or slide Greg Van Roten to that spot, then slot in Neal or someone else to guard? This is what I'm going to be asking Jordan Ronan, because I saw one of those Giants accounts tweet out that Jordan Ronan said that there are people that are in the building that think Greg Van Roten is the team's best option at center. Okay, even if that's the case, I would rather see John Michael Schmitz struggle at center than the way that Evan Neal is probably going to struggle at guard. That's flat out the truth. If they really felt that Greg Van Roten was their best option at center, then why weren't they more aggressive at guard outside of missing out on Will Freeze? They didn't get Will Freeze. He was a free agent from the Colts. They didn't wind up getting him. So was that the only option at guard that would have made them feel better? And then you sign Greg Van Roten and then slide him over to center, and then John Michael Schmitz is the backup? Jordan also said there's people, I got to hear, I didn't hear what he said, but I just saw that somebody tweeted it out, that he said that there are people in the building that think that Greg Van Roten is the better option over JMS. Depends who is saying that and who has that belief, right? So I would much rather see John Michael Schmitz. We know what John Michael Schmitz is, and it's not great at times. But I'd rather see that than whatever Evan Neal's going to do, because I think the higher floor is John Michael Schmitz. And I think that's an easy answer. I still think they're going to try and do this rotation because it's Evan Neal, and they really want him to work. All right, I'm going to ask these next 3 questions, but kind of just all in one. CH1SCO90 on Instagram asked, what's your prediction on what our record will be? And then Patrick on Instagram with a complicated username, he asked, when do you think Jackson Dart will be named as the starter? And then Zach_Esh34 also on Instagram asks, what QB starts the most games for the New York Giants this year? So I think on our record prediction show with New York Revival, I went 6-11. I'm going to bump it up to 7-10. You got me preseason. You got me training camp. You got me to bump it up by 1. I think they can go 7-10 this year. Now, obviously, the record of how they do is totally going to be indicative of when Jackson Dart is going to be slotted in and when he's going to come in, right? I don't know. Like I don't know when Dart is going to come in, because it's just so... I don't know how the Giants are going to start the first 4 weeks of the season. Like, if they go 2-2, we're not seeing Dart for a little bit. If they go 1-3, then you may see him sooner than you think. If they go 0-4, you're probably seeing week 5. So, I don't know, man. But the main thing that I'm walking away with from this preseason is saying I'm not dreading the Dart announcement. April, May, June, everything leading up to training camp, what I thought about Jackson Dart as a prospect, as a football player, I was dreading the announcement. Dreading, like, oh shit, like, when is it going to come? And it's going to be a bad situation, and he's not ready, and he's raw, and they're going to rely on him to save everybody's ass and save everybody's job. And the vibes are going to be bad to begin with. Sure, there'll be juice for a week or two when the new starter's announced, but it still will be a bad situation, because if the Giants are a bad football team with Russell Wilson, then guess what? They're going to probably be bad with Jackson Dart too, because that means that they're probably just a bad team. Probably. But I'm not dreading that anymore. I was dreading it because it's like, I don't want to set this guy up to fail. But maybe what this preseason showed, what this summer showed, is maybe this guy has just got, maybe he's just got that it. Maybe he's just that dude. Maybe he's ready for this shit. But take advantage of the infrastructure that you built, that you don't have to throw him in there right away. Let Joe Shane's roster go out and try and compete. Like, this is not just a Jackson Dart isn't going to be Jackson Dart will be the thing that saves Joe Shane and Brian Dable's ass, because that's what happens with every quarterback that you nail, and then okay, well, we'll work on the roster, but we got the quarterback. But part of what makes me most frustrated with Joe Shane isn't that he didn't land his quarterback through his first 3 years here, is that he's built a shit roster. So for me, 2025 isn't just about, oh, you got to see we got Jackson Dart. 2025 is this roster getting to a spot that it needs to get to be competitive? That's what it's about. More than Jackson Dart for me as a fan. I need to see that Joe Shane and the foundation that is set here, is it a foundation that's actually worth building upon? 2024 draft class. Can anybody in the 2022 draft class get extended? Can Cordell Flott show that he's a good depth player that you can extend? Wan'Dale Robinson, is he a slot guy that you can extend, or is he just a replaceable player? Kayvon Thibodeau, what's the future of Kayvon? I don't know, man. That's what this year's about. When do I think Jackson Dart will be named starter? Ideally, the week after the bye for week 15. Week 15, 16, 17, 18 for the final 4 games of the year. Realistically, earlier. And hopefully it's, if you had me to pin down a week between week 8 to 10, that's the time that I think is realistic. But hopefully this team is better. Hopefully the Giants are kicking some ass. Hopefully they're sacking the quarterback. They're putting the quarterback on the ground. Hopefully Malik Neighbors is killing it. Hopefully Andrew Thomas is healthy. Hopefully we're getting some big plays. We're scoring some damn points, and we're having a ton of fun. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully an interview with Jordan Rodon coming out on Tuesday as we get excited, head to the season. Next week is going to be the last week without Giants football until the month of February. All right, we'll see you then. Have a good Labor Day weekend. I'm going to be at Clemson LSU, so I'm going to have a good little fun weekend. Let's go, Giants. Appreciate you. See you next week.
It starts today! Let's go, Giants! We bleed blue!